Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer. This is Sasha. I spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. I've got a lot of stories about the stupid stuff I did to get put in prison, also the crazy stuff that happened while I was in prison, and God forbid you end up in prison. You won't have to make some of the same mistakes I made, so this is an insane story, okay? First off, DC went hard in prison, I'll tell you that. Now, at a higher rate than anybody else, they had some people that were into some off type, stuff. But, a couple of my best friends were from DC, so, I'm not talking crap about a whole place. Some of my best friends, Talib, he's out managing a Walmart in DC, got clemency after 17 years, living his best life. Smoke, he'd been in prison 42 years, one of my best friends, funny as could be. But, wild bunch. This is actually a story about a trip I took to DC to pick up a package, okay? Back when I was dealing, slanging, and all that type of stuff, doing hood rat stuff with my friends. So, how this worked out was I did drug court twice. The first time that I did drug court, I did everything wrong. Selling dope, everything else, using dope, trying to beat the drug test, just complete addict stuff. And the second time, I did everything perfect. I was the speaker at the graduation, did everything perfect, but they still made me go to prison. That wasn't enough, but that was for state charges in which I did drug court. The federal charges said, no, not enough, still had to go to prison, 8 years. So, anyway, I got put into a rehab shortly after being in drug court. As long as I had a connection as an addict, usually kept with money. When I didn't have a connection, I ended up dope fiend just like anybody else. But if I had a connection, then I had money. I kept it in the life, and I figured that was the best way to do it, rather than scheming, scamming, and stealing. So that was like my moral justification for it. Was rather than lie, scheme, scam, and steal, I'd just sell it. So look out, worked out. 20s lost to federal prison. But anyway, so I was in this rehab. I met the guy who was the man, who we'll call Big Man. Big Man, corner of the blow market for a large part of the area. Got up with him once I got out too. Now, there's this other guy, Denny. Denny was a guy who was like in his 30s, who I made friends with in this rehab. There's a guy who we'll call Joe. Joe I grew up with. He was about a year or two ahead of me in school. Joe's girlfriend was in this rehab. Denny was banging Joe's girlfriend every time we had an outing. They'd sneak off and get it going. I ended up in a halfway house, okay? I ended up in a halfway house, 4 addicts run by addicts, no government involvement, which should tell you about something about its model. I mean, 4 out of the 7 of us who were in the halfway house were selling dope. So, yeah, I got made president of it. So that should tell you about its structure. Like, I was the highest ranking person in there, So, at one point, which made no sense, because as a kid, didn't have any sense. How the house works was in this room, me and Joe end up in a room. Denny ends up in the room next to us. I introduce him. And Joe's like, oh, yeah, you're the one who's been banging my girlfriend. And Denny's like, and I busted out laughing. I mean, it was awful, but I mean, kind of awkward. So, during this time, I'm doing the thing with Big Man. I hooked up with him, getting all kinds of stuff going. Denny's mostly just scrambling, getting a script off somebody, getting rid of it to people, just sporadic stuff. And Denny introduces me to this bunch. Dickie the fake Muslim, everybody's favorite crackhead, who I've told stories about. Dickie I met before prison, but in prison he comes up to me. Before prison he's, about 150, 160 pounds. See him in prison, he'd been eating good. And he's got a big old beard. I didn't recognize him at first. I mean, he looked like Abraham Lincoln. And I said, you pretend to be a Muslim? He said, yeah, nobody messes with a Muslim in prison. He told me straight up he was pretending to be. So, no doubt about that. How I met Dickie and his crazy family. They could rival the whites of West Virginia. They were that wild of a bunch. So, Denny tells me this. I don't know for sure this is what happened. This is what Denny told me. They have a rich mom. And basically, they were doing crazy, junky stuff, tearing the house up, getting in fights, everything else. She got the 3 brothers and the dad together, who the dad was off the rails too, and said, listen, there's this place called Roanoke, Virginia. I've never been there, but I've heard it's really nice. I got y'all bus tickets and a house. You're leaving tomorrow. They moved to Roanoke. Within a year, they messed up the house. They sold the house for $100,000. Each of them got $25,000, at which point you would guess they would do something like, back then, like Hyundais were going for like $12,000 with a 10-year warranty, 100,000 mile. You'd think they would have got a car like that. No, they got what I call a Yo MTV Raps car. A Yo MTV Raps car is when you buy a $100,000 SL500 Mercedes that would sell for $100,000 brand new, you buy it for $10,000 with 200,000 miles on it. Of course it's not going to last you long, but that's a baller on a budget mentality, and they got to look like they're cool. With the remaining $15,000, they lived in hotel rooms and got high. They didn't think anything about their, further living situation. So, that's how I met them. Denny introduced me to them when they were wasting all that money. Eventually, they burned through the money, end up moving back to Northern Virginia, and basically just, not back with the mom, but just in different places. So, Denny tells me one day that basically they got a connection in D.C. that, there's that we can make so much, this, that, and I'm like, well, with big man, I got this good thing going on. He's like, but you make this, he talked me into it. I'm like, screw it, whatever, let's do it. So we decide we're going to take this trip up to D.C. to pick up a package. So the trip starts out, now we're living at this halfway house. In order to be away from this halfway house for a night, you can't just not show up, they'll kick you out. You have to arrange. So I said I was somewhere, he said he was somewhere else. It's like kids telling their parents they're going somewhere they're not really going. I mean, that's kind of like the halfway house authority on you. So we go down there, and the first night we get there, we first meet up with them that day, okay? And we meet up with Dickie, and he's in this townhouse. Like, how people, like, they're going through hard times, they'll rent out the basement. Well, that's the type of deal this was. And we had to be real quiet when we was down there, and it was Dickie and his girlfriend. His girlfriend, who is, you could tell she used to be really good looking, but not anymore. A life of alcohol and drugs have given her hard lines in her face, and when you hear, don't make a face too much, mean face too much, it'll get stuck that way. Her face got stuck that way. She had hard lines and always looked angry. She was about 90 pounds with big old fake flotation device implants. And she talked like this, like literally, she'd snap up like this. Like, that's what she sounded like. Like, whenever they'd always show up, and he'd never have it, he'd tell me he wanted so much, he'd show up at my apartment. This is a separate story. They'd never have the correct amount of money. They'd always be $20 short. And be like, oh, what happened to the money? She's like, so-and-so must have took it. He's like, oh, baby. Oh, I don't know. And she'd say, baby, what are we going to do? And she'd say it just like that. I'm not exaggerating. She's like 40 to 50 years old with him. He was like 30 at the time. And he had pictures of her, like, showing me, like, you see how hot she was? And I'm like, yeah, too bad you didn't catch her back then. Busted now. So we meet with them. We end up going to meet, the people to pick up part of it. They've only got part of it this day. This is an absolutely insane setup. I'm nervous driving to this area. It looks crazy as can be. It's behind a liquor store that we're driving to, and he tells me, he says, listen, sit on the money you're going to give to him and keep $20 in your hand. That way if we get robbed, you can just give him the $20. I'm like, where are you taking it? What are we doing? Oh, this doesn't sound good. So we drive up. There's this house that's run down, boarded up, and there's 5 guys sitting on a stoop on some stairs and literally drinking 40s. Like, it is something out of a movie. It's like, oh my God. And there's this guy, a black fellow who's got dreads, missing a front tooth, walks up to the car and says, what y'all want? What y'all want? What y'all looking for? Somebody just got robbed about 20 minutes ago. Y'all need to hurry up and get this done. I'm like, oh God. He's like, we've already talked to so-and-so. He's like, well, go ahead, give it to me. And I'm like, and thinking, give him the money. Should I give him the money? I gave him the money. And he goes up to the corner. On the corner, there is a sign that says, no stopping, standing, or parking at any time. Sure enough, there's an ice cream truck parked on the corner. There's a woman, young, decent looking, but she looks like she's twacked out, like paranoid. She's looking back and forth. This guy with the missing tooth walks up to the back of this ice cream truck, opens up the door, puts the money in, gets it back, brings it back and gives it to us. Tells us we'll need to end up getting the rest of it tomorrow, so that was that. I'm like, oh my God, get me out of here. So we end up going to a hotel, staying there. Now, Dickie ends up, I don't know if they went to a club or something, but these 3 random people who are friends with them end up coming over to our hotel room. Denny's drinking like crazy. I'm not drinking at all. I look at this as like a business transactional thing. He's drinking. I'm like, dude, you're going to be too drunk. I'm not. Matter of fact, I'll drive. You can just chill out while I do everything. I'm like, dude, and I'm getting mad at him, and the drunker he's getting, there are 3 people who they've brought over from some club or whatever. There are 2 guys and 1 girl. Pretty girl. Denny starts hitting on this girl, who's clearly the girlfriend, who's clearly with one of these 2 guys. Starts talking crazy. Denny's not big. He's like 5'6", 130, 140 pounds. He's cut up, but I mean, he's drunk and he can't really fight, and he's not a fighter. He's not. He gets drunk, and there are a number of times we had to save him. Like, he'd get drunk and he'd say stuff he shouldn't say. We'll just say that. And the guy, these 2 guys who they brought over, it's cool. I mean, it's like they're college people, college kids from the local university, and they're being cool about it, but I'm like, dude, you're being a complete dick. Stop it. And he's going nuts, going crazy, and I'm clearly mad. We end up getting them gone. We end up hiding it, what we had gotten so far. I remember I hid it. There with the hotel, the curtains, hid it up and tied it up in there. Well, Dickie and his girlfriend come back the next day. They insist that we give them some of what we got before we go, so they could get messed up. We gave them some. They got messed up. They tied off. I didn't like watching that. And anyway, we get in the car. We go back to the place. We go back to the same place that we was at before. And, the ice cream truck is no longer there. There's this dude. He's got a, one of them Bluetooth, like them little ear things, the phone things in. Big guy, big chain, black fella. And, he's got jewelry all over him. And he ends up sending a girl to the car. We give her the money. She gets this. This is like early. It's like 7, 8 a.m. And he ends up saying, Dickie's basically letting him know. They said they'll be back a lot, and he tells them a little bit too much, and then we roll out of there. Go back, retrieve what we got. Oh, I forgot something. This was such an important part. The next morning, when we woke up, before we went to go take off to this place, Denny was hungover, messed up, and he says, I think you're going to have to go. And I cussed him out. I said, I knew you was going to do this. I told you not to be drinking. I know. I'm sorry, dude. I know. So I had to go alone. I forgot about that part. Yeah, that was the whole point. He drank so much that he could not make that trip. Okay? He could not make that trip to go do it. So I ended up having to go, and I'm like, oh, my Lord. And there's other stories about other people going up this place without them and everything else. But anyway, we get back. Everything's good. We start the drive back. And I remember, I think the Redskins might have been playing the Cowboys whenever this happened, because there was this song, and it said something about, like, it was a rap song, but it says something about coming from D.C. or something. And me and Denny looked at each other like it sounded like the song was talking about us. And we end up making it back to the halfway house by 6 o'clock, at which time we have to do our little meeting where, they talk about, has everybody paid their rent, and this, and that, and stash the stuff in the house, and that was that. So, yeah, this was an absolutely insane, absurd trip. There's another story that goes along with this, with Denny going back up without me, that led to something else really bad happening for him and somebody else that I will get to at another time. But basically, it ended up being like a wasted trip, because like we had this whole setup of we were going to keep going back and forth there. I said, I'm never going there again. That was the craziest thing I've ever seen. Walked up to an ice cream truck. The guy walks up to the car, says, somebody got robbed here 20 minutes ago. Got to give him the money. He's got to walk to the back of an ice cream truck, have somebody hand something to him, while there's this woman who looks like she's cracked out of her mind sitting in the driver's seat of the car. Not going back there ever again. And it ended up being a whole weird situation. Ended up not going back there ever again. It ended up being a one-time trip. And that ended up being something to sat on. I'll talk about that another time. But anyways, yeah, it's a wild story. DC definitely goes hard. I mean, somebody got robbed there 20 minutes before us. And something else Dickie told us before we pulled up. He said, if the cops pull us over, just tell them you're here to cop. And I'm like, tell the cops we're here to buy stuff we shouldn't be buying that's illegal? He says, yeah, they don't care about that. They're just trying to catch the dealers that have a whole lot on them. I said, that sounds like the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. He says, we've done it before. And I'm like, there's no way that this place is that hot that if you tell them I'm just here to buy stuff, I'm not selling it, that they just let you go. And he swore by that. And I was like, everything about this sounds wrong. Sit on your money, have a 20 in your hand so you can hand it to the nice robbers when they pull up if they try to rob you. if the cops pull us over, tell them, yeah, we're here to buy stuff. That's it. We're just trying to get messed up for the day. It was the most absurd, high-risk situation. Somebody I learned had gotten popped there, like, not too long back. Like in like the weeks or so before that. Like, it was the most dangerous situation. Like, I'm like a kid going up there with no sense, thinking I'm gonna be, DMX in Belly or George Jung in Blow, and I'm putting myself at risk. I'm lucky something really terribly bad did not happen to me. Then when I look back at this, and I'm just like, oh my God, how did, got really, really lucky is what happened. But I did have enough sense not to go back there, I'll tell you that. I always was on risk management, with what was I needed to feel comfortable with whatever I was doing. So that was something that was not a repeat journey. This was just a 48-hour period of my life. I have so many stories just like this that I cannot even count them. I've got literally probably 50 pages of just one line on each page that tells about something that'll remind me of something crazy. And I've got a whole lot go down the list. It's going to take years and years to get all these out, and even then, for each person I know 10 stories about each person, so they're not going to run out anytime soon, believe that. The only thing is, which order do I tell them in, how to prioritize them. That's my only thing that, which one to tell which day. So anyway, if you like the video, if you think I've earned it, press the like button. I never ask you to press the like button at the start of the video, because why would I do that? You don't know if you liked it yet. But if you've watched it this far, come on. Be nice if you pressed it. I'd appreciate it. But if not, I do understand, and I do apologize. But that is 16 minutes and 40 seconds of your life in which you will never ever get back. And for that, I'm truly, truly sorry. But I do hope you liked it. So if you watched it this far and you did like it, press the like button. It does help. You guys have a good one.